What's up, y'all? You're listening to the My Nation podcast. I'm Alex Miller with the Eagle, joined always by Robert Cessna. Cease, we've had a few days to digest A&M's loss to Notre Dame. In hindsight, what's the biggest thing that you took away from that game for the Aggies?
Offense has work to do, and I think I'm like a lot of people. I was anxious. I always get anxious and eager wrong. I always have to look it up in my style book. But anyway, to see the Colin Klein offense. And, of course, we never saw it because, if your quarterback can't complete a pass. So, really, I think it was a wasted day, really, for the offense, whether you're a fan, media, or whatever. But, which I tried to allude to with Elko, I think they can be glad they played Notre Dame because I think if they'd have, run ruled somebody like McNeese State, you say, oh, man, what a great offense. Colin Klein's the greatest thing ever. Well, they got work to do.
Yeah. Connor Weigman, of course, didn't have a great game. We talked about it a lot in our Saturday recap that our listeners can go back and listen to. I got to say, I was pretty impressed by the fact that he showed up on Monday and he was very quick to take ownership and responsibility of his shortcomings and acknowledged that he has a lot of work to do and not a lot of time for them to get this offense turned around.
I'm with you 100%, but also I guess I'm the cranky old guy. A little bit of, conspiracy theory is I got a rough time with the happy feet, not being able to throw a 15-yard completion. To me, that's a concern because he's been in the system long enough. This is his third year, and I throw out names like Zach Calzada and Haynes King sometimes had trouble throwing that 15-yard down and out, and that's a whole different theory, whether it was the scheme or whatever. But after watching as much college football as I watched this weekend, you just expect a quarterback to be able to throw a 15-yard down and out almost on the money.
So what, in your eyes, would constitute a successful game against a team like McNeese that, in your words, A&M should run rule in a sense?
Well, skill is skill. Like I said, Alex, if we walked out here in the parking lot against Jake Weiss and Andrew Tanay, and you did a down and out, I should be able to throw it to you in 10 yards. And if I overthrow you or underthrow you or throw left or right, you're going to run the routes. You got to do the basics. And I think this is a good time to focus because you're playing a team you're going to win, but can you do it consistently? Can you snap the ball? A&M had a couple bad snaps, but they're playing Notre Dame. I expect that. I don't expect that I expect a lot of flawless efforts and a lot of flawless windows. You're going to have mistakes. You're playing somebody and you go, oh man, I just ran 5 times for 50 yards. Do I have to run again?
I guess that's why Andrew didn't go to a school that has a football team. But anyway, hey, aside from the attention on Weigman, I think that something else that A&M's looking to improve is where the receivers are at. In the preseason, somebody asked Elko, hey, you guys have a number one receiver? And he said yes, but he didn't say who. And
who?
I think we can all assume that he was probably alluding to Noah Thomas, but at this point in the season, obviously through one game and a rough passing performance, we don't quite know who that is. And, look, Notre Dame, vaunted secondary, right? They had 2 All-Americans returning, a couple guys that might be first-round draft picks next year, but, how critical is it for A&M to get their receivers going in a group that, may not have right now an over-the-top burner kind of guy that people would call, like an eraser type player? Yeah,
you touched on it because if I wanted to give Weigman an F, I'd give the wide receivers a D because they didn't get wide open every time. They were covered up, and obviously when at one time that Weigman got the sack, he looked all around and no one was open. So those guys have to get separation, and that goes back a little bit to we don't know enough. Klein's got to have a package where he knows who gets open against what. Because if you watch the Florida-Miami game, all their wide receivers were running open, and how much of that was separation, how much it was that defense, I think it's a little bit of both. But you're right. A&M's wide receivers need to step up. They got these transfers in or whatever. If you are who you say you are, this is the kind of game I feel Weigman should be 21 for like 28 for 300 yards. And if they don't do that, something's wrong.
Yeah, this is the type of game you hope to see your backup in when you're up 50 in the third quarter and the other team's thinking, man, maybe we should get a running clock going or something. But that remains to be seen. Hey, here's this, though. Is A&M in a good stretch to have to figure out things on offense when you look at they play McNeese? And yes, they have to go on the road at Florida, but Florida got obliterated by Miami at home. I don't know how good this Gators team really is. And then they come back home and play Bowling Green, who, probably going to compete for a MAC championship, but they're probably not a college football playoff caliber team. Is this a good stretch of the season for A&M to have to figure things out, knowing there's bigger fish to fry down the road?
I think this loss could be good a month from now. I felt like everything was coming real easy for A&M. The hype. Oh man, they're 20. They beat Notre Dame. They'd be 11th to 13th right now. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But are they that good? Maybe if they'd have beaten Notre Dame. But what I also think is they have a sense of urgency. But they played pretty good on defense at times. Now, the run defense was bad, but I think that's something they can fix because I think that surprised them. I think if we had Nick Scarton this week or Shamir Turner, I bet those guys were a little bit embarrassed. I think they were shocked probably. So they're going to atone for that. And so I think the defense is going to be – Will Lee is the blanket, baby. He looked pretty good. So
that guy just made a really good catch on him.
And everybody's forgetting is the last few years, the special teams was great. Everything was great about the special teams, and we've ripped so many different things over the years about specific. They lost Anais Smith, and they look really good on special teams. And when you get in the SEC, if you have good special teams play, you'll win one or two games you shouldn't if you get the kind of play they had, kicking it out of the end zone. 50-yard punts, get 10 yards on
make all your field goals.
Bunt returns, make all your field goals from 49 yards in. You'll win games.
Not to mention that was a range that Bond really struggled in last year.
Right.
He was pretty good from short range. He was
inside 40.
He was money from 50 plus, but 40 to 49. I don't. He had the yips or something. Like he could not really do well in that range.
Maybe A&M's so ahead of the game. His NIL deals pays more for field goals between the 40 and the 50.
Yeah, here's my thing with the defense. At this point, I don't think they've got work to do themselves. To your point, though, I don't think there's anything that isn't fixable. Like, you think about quite a few missed tackles. York missed big on the long touchdown run. He owned up to that. He seemed pretty pissed off on Monday when we talked to him, by the way.
He was.
And he also strikes me as the type of guy that's going to do everything in his will to get that kind of thing corrected.
How many times last year do we talk about Toyin York or Cooper missing tackles? They didn't miss tackles.
They didn't miss tackles.
And first game, we're talking about the biggest missed tackle turned into a 47-yard touchdown in a one-score game, basically.
Yeah, and you think about it too. Notre Dame, they had one field goal on the short field when Weigman threw the interception, and then of course they got the field goal at the end when A&M had to go for it on 4th and 2.
Yeah,
big deal. A&M forced a 3 and out. I think that's why I'm not in the sky is falling mode right now. Obviously, losing a game like that can really suck a lot of the excitement and the energy out of what was a very anticipated game. But there's a lot of football left to be played, and from my viewpoint, pretty much everything at this point is fixable, in my opinion.
Without a doubt. And that being said, is the offense was so bad. This is where I have a problem because I don't break down film. I just watch it live with these old eyes. And I thought most times Notre Dame was sending only 4. And they were able, and Weigman wasn't under pressure all night, but the offense couldn't do anything. So I don't think Notre Dame really ever changed their defense.
No.
So I'd like to see what I don't know what A&M line can do against exotic blitzes, against things like this, because Notre Dame didn't have to do that. And A&M ran the ball well, but they didn't run the ball great. So Notre Dame never had to change what they do. And believe it or not, they might be able to learn a little from McNeese, because McNeese is going to come out and do wild things because they're the underdog. So, believe it or not, if Weigman doesn't get sacked this week, I think that would be a step forward, because McNeese has nothing to lose anymore. Everybody's got some players. I think last time they played me, it was like 38-24. I don't expect that, because McNeese is really not that good. You look at some of the scores. But that doesn't mean you can't see glimpses of what do you do. And, you don't want to see, unfortunately, we've seen this before, like they come with an exotic blitz and a guy comes clear. And even if it's one sack they allow and the guy came clear, then that's a concern, because moving forward.
That's how Weigman got hurt last year.
That's how Weigman basically got hurt last year. Yeah.
Well, Cease, any final thoughts on heading into A&M's matchup against McNeese?
Well, as a writer, I always hate these kind of games because they mean so little. But actually, this game does mean a lot for A&M. They need to get back, and Weigman needs to have that 75% completion or better, because he looked that bad. And receivers need to help him out. His line helped him out last week. They need to do that again. If the line can build on what they did last week, even though it's McNeese State, you'll get a little bit of confidence. And let's be honest, around the corner, A&M has lost 10 straight games on the road. You can take nothing for granted going on the road in the SEC.
No, not at all. Even against a team like Florida that got shelled at home against Miami. Florida. We'll talk about this next week, but man, Florida's kind of on the hot seat right now in terms of their coaching staff, and that should give A&M cause for, having a little fire in their belly to make sure they don't let something slip away from them.
I was trying to be really good today, because if I don't watch out, Napier could be behind this mic before the season's over.
All right. Well, hey, that's gonna do it for us this week on the Miami Nation podcast. Be sure to check theeagle.com for all of our coverage leading up to A&M's game against McNeese State. We'll see you next time on the Miami Nation podcast.